Welcome, everybody. So today we're talking about how cashless is going to really change our industry and how we can adopt it. But I'd like to just first get our panelists today to introduce themselves. So I'll start with Chris Rogers. So Chris, tell us a little about yourself.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone. Welcome. Chris Rogers. I'm the CEO of 113 East, which is my company that I started in Macau. I started in the industry on the supply side back in Australia, moved up to Macau, lived in Macau for 12 years, went up there with a company that is now known as Light & Wonder. It was Shuffle Master when we set them up. Early on into my career in Macau, I decided to go at it by myself, start some new businesses with the support of my amazing wife, who's actually in the industry, Powertronics, best jackpot salesperson in the industry, right there. And then went on the adventure of starting a number of different businesses, which led me to things like doing some operations with cashless gaming up in Sri Lanka, for instance, and then more recently moving into sort of technology space. So I've got a number of companies, one where my partner Andy spoke on another panel earlier today, TraffGen, which is sort of driving innovation into casinos in and around, and cashless will be part of that. But, you know, that technology will be added into that as well. So lots of different things, but, you know, lots of different experiences as well.
Thanks very much, Chris. And Steve Tsao from Yolo.
Sure. I'm Steve. I'm a general partner at Yolo Investments. My background started in games. So I built game publishers, largest in Southeast Asia, largest in Arabic Middle East, and then one for Greater China. So had an IPO, sold another one to Abu Dhabi, and then the other one was already New York listed when I took over and turned it around. Then I realized there's a lot more money in casinos from gamblers. So I turned my skills of acquisition, retention, and monetization to a different segment of internet players. And built a few brands and built a few CEOs and sponsored teams from Arsenal to Juventus to Sao Paulo. Right now at Yolo Investments, we're about 700 mil USD asset under management spread across 80 or so investments, some of which are the larger crypto casinos in the world. So we do about probably $4 billion a month of total bets. I don't know how much that is in deposits. Pan-global, Brazil, Japan, everywhere except for the United States, obviously. And then we have investments across suppliers, operators, and aggregators. But on the cashless side, it's really our bread and butter. It's what we have built a lot of businesses around. And then we also have some land-based operations, or, you know, on yachts and VIP rooms. But we really target VIPs rather than the retails. So, yeah.
Thanks very much for the introduction there. And Nick Hill from nChain, please.
Yeah. Hi, yeah, I'm Nick Hill, and hello to you all, and thank you all for being here, and thank you to AGB for putting this event on, and we can all meet in person once again. So yeah, I'm Nick Hill. I'm representing a company called nChain. nChain is a blockchain development company. Personally, I've been involved in the online gaming space for in excess of 20 years, but it was around about 2017 that I started to get more involved in crypto, and crypto certainly sort of, you know, started to make waves, but I really understood that crypto was just an application that sits on blockchain technology, and blockchain as a technology has a vast number of attributes that we can use in the online and offline gaming space. And so today, hopefully, we're going to sort of educate the audience here about the wonders of blockchain technology and how we can take it into the metaverse for, you know, gambling-related products, how we can use it in the land-based environment for cashless casinos, and how we can use it online. So, so yeah, that's basically a little synopsis of who I am.
Thanks very much, Nick.
I'm just here to listen to these two.
So today, this morning, we've been listening to panels and talking about how casinos are really increasing the adoption of technology based on this experience through the pandemic. The most used phrase in 2020 was, "I think you're on mute." So everybody got used to using the online technology of Zoom and all of those sorts of things. As many of our members here, I haven't used cash in any transaction for 2.5 years. So I can go into hospitality venues, taxis, any shopping, even when I'm making tips for people, I don't use cash anymore. But when I walk into a casino, I will still have to get cash to play at a table. So with the background of all of our team here, I actually wanted to bring it back to online gaming and sports betting. And what does cashless mean to you in the online environment? Nick, I'll start with you.
Well, cashless in the online environment, well, it is all pretty cashless because obviously you're depositing, via a card, a debit card, a wallet, or any sort of solution. So there is no physical cash. But if we start to take that into the land-based environment, that's where it starts to get exciting of how we can use the technologies that are available today to encourage operators or land-based casinos, IRs, to actually embrace the technologies that are available and be able to use the technology to encourage their players to create wallets, to start to use and transact with the tables and the machines on the casino floors to become like a cashless environment. So in the online world, it's always been cashless, in my opinion, because you're not transacting in dollars. But we need to be able to sort of with convergence of the technologies and what's happened with the pandemic, it's forced the convergence. It's forced us all to embrace a cashless society. How often do you use cash now? You don't?
No, not often. So when we're talking about cashless, are we just talking from a banking point of view, somebody using their credit card, Chris? Or what are the other options of talking cashless when you're in the online?
Cashless has been around for quite a while, like land-based cashless has been around, system-based, card-based, and it makes sense in certain circumstances. And I agree, the pandemic has forced people to have a look at how they transact and actually how they think, and through that, so the uptake of technology has increased, but it's also created some opportunities even from a regulatory point of view. So regulators are now looking at, certain markets and saying, well, I think the pandemic really showed that land-based isn't bulletproof. All right, so and then you've got a community starting to embrace technology that perhaps they weren't looking at. So cashless is a major part of that. All right, so online, it makes a lot of sense that it's cashless. But now people are used to using technology. Like Zoom's another good example, right? A lot of people weren't using that technology. Now everybody knows about it. The fact that people are starting not to use cash, or they realise now that they don't have to, opens up huge opportunities for all sectors, I think.
So Nick, just before you mentioned things like digital and digital wallets. What do you mean by that?
Right, okay, so digital wallet, we're all starting to use, Apple Pay, Samsung Pay, you've got Google Pay, everything's on your wallet. So, a time will come, or it's already here, where you've got a wallet and you've got your fiat currency, traditional currency, you've got your cryptocurrencies in your wallet. So, you're transacting using your mobile device on a daily basis. When we start looking at sort of like going into the land-based casinos, you're going to start to see casinos adopting or creating their own wallets with their own stable tokens within that wallet, pegged to a currency. It could be USD, it could be GBP, it could be PHP. So that's going to be the wallet or the currency of the casino, and you will then be able to start to transact with the machines and the tables within that casino environment. So, you know, the days are here now where this is king. It's everything. It's your banking, it's your wallet, it is your identity. It's got your digital identity. You'll soon have all your passport details on here, and you literally beep in and beep out of everywhere you go. So this is where the technology is going. And it's not going to be tens of years, it's going to be a matter of a few years. We'll all be using and transacting using a mobile device. So this will become the wallet, you know, for want of a better word, yeah.
So here we're talking about a frictionless environment really as well. So it's not even that they'll be using a card, they can use their own devices.
Exactly that.
So Steve, in this regard, so if we're looking at this digital world, so going back to the experiences that you've had, how do you make sure that these transactions are secure?
I think two aspects about it. For the online and also the offline aspect, you have really fiat, which is your standard country currencies and such, and crypto. And the word crypto, the purpose of it is really about decentralization versus centralization. Because you don't really need cryptographic high-level technology if it's a centralized system like your email login, like every account you have, and every bank account you have. There's a different type of security on that. For crypto, it's really about a decentralized system for me to transact directly with Chris, for me to transact directly with Nick. That's why crypto is there. So in terms of, and we were talking about this a little bit yesterday, in a centralized environment, you can have a whole slew of problems if you're not running your company and your data security well. But just like if you're an idiot there, you're going to be an idiot anywhere. So you know, if you give away your email and your password is password, you're pretty much going to be screwed no matter how you set up your security. On the crypto aspect, it really comes down to decentralization and some of the work you guys are doing with nChain that allows uncentralized reconciliation of bets and payouts and such. But yeah, I think depending on how you operate, whether it's a centralized traditional system versus a decentralized system, you have to ask yourself why decentralized and go from there.
So when we're talking about blockchain and cryptocurrency in these types of wallets, it can be quite a scary direction to go for land-based casinos. And you're working with a number of different regulations. So how do we bring regulators on board to get into this type of environment? And I'll give an example, Chris. So in Australia, we've gone through some Royal Commissions. There will be some expectations that casinos will have to go cashless. And looking at these different opportunities, how do you think you know, we can have some level of comfort for regulators that cashless is a way to understand our customers better?
Sure. I think, you know, from a regulatory point of view, there's a massive focus on responsible gaming, AML. I know at Trafton we're focusing a lot on that. Right? There's opportunities in and around that, and I think, you know, from a crypto point of view, or blockchain. So blockchain gets mixed up with crypto. The blockchain technology is very solid. It's been proven in many different industries. When you add the crypto, people are a little bit wary because of the, you know, because of the volatility of that. But in actual fact, the technology is coming where, you know, it will be a stable technology. Payment gateways will be stable. They'll be pegged to, you know, a currency, and there won't be that fluctuation, and it will provide exactly what, you know, regulators are looking for. You know, something that can be traceable, that is solid, right, that can't be messed with. And I think it's a natural fit. It's exactly where all the regulators are going to push it. You know, and I think the pandemic has definitely helped that. They've seen, okay, you know, we've got an opportunity now to push this and to get it to a level. And, you know, thankfully the technology's there. I just think there's a lot of, you know, misunderstanding about how certain technologies could be applied, which I think over time will start to be tidied up. And I agree with Nick, it's not going to happen, it's hard to exactly put a timeline on things, but I think the acceleration of the adoption of certain technologies is going to be way quicker than what's ever happened in the past.
Yeah, and also I'd like to add on that. So once you've implemented or you've created your wallet and you're transacting with a machine, and you can then start to, obviously there's got to be a basic sort of KYC process. So you've created your wallet, you've gone through the KYC process, you're sitting at a machine, and you enlightened me yesterday, Heather, that you're going to have a 3-hour sort of timeout. So because you're transacting via your wallet to the machine, and every spin of the wheel is being transacted and is being stored or logged on chain, you know that this person's been sitting at a slot machine for 4, 5, 6 hours. If you take the Australian example, you've got a 3-hour maximum, you can push a suggestion, hey, here's your coffee break, here's a voucher, here's, go and redeem this voucher at the coffee store and go and take your 15, 20-minute, 30-minute break. Because you can start to embed your AML, your KYC, all these attributes of player protection, responsible gambling can be embedded into the wallet scenario as well as the loyalty program. So it starts to encompass everything. So there's a hell of a lot that you can do with this progressive technology called blockchain that happens to be around for quite some time. It's just that crypto is an application that sits on a blockchain.
Okay, so we're already getting to the discussion around what we could do in land-based. So we know on slot machines we've had ticket in, ticket out for a long time. There's been plenty of countries that have already had carded play where they can put money onto a card and play it on slot machines in different countries. What's your experience with that, Chris?
So from the basic cashless system, I had some slot operations up in Sri Lanka where we used the cashless card-based system due to the fact that the currency there, it was very difficult. It was hard to manage. So we had the opportunity to open up a new site, and we didn't give the customers the choice. We sort of drove them the way that we needed, which allowed us to do things like better loyalty service and things like that. So I mean, it's been around for a long time. I just think the technologies, as we've discussed, are getting more and more advanced. And more importantly, society is becoming more tech savvy. The mobile phone, is the gateway to everything. So, I think it's just going to be a natural progression.
And so, Steve, you've been involved in different technologies. How do you bring along the older group of people? So in our gaming world, we might have a number of players who, if you're over 70, no offence to anybody over 70, the idea of a change, and so you can just put this into the context of anywhere that you've been working, but how do you make sure that you don't leave anybody behind in any adoption of technology? I know that's out of the ball for you.
Look, from my investment perspective, I wouldn't try to find a solution for everything. I would find targeted victories and then double down on those targeted victories. If that leaves certain segments unfulfilled, but it still generates good ROIs. For me, I think that from an investment perspective is really my focus. And I think trying to launch with a solution that encompasses everybody is a challenging mission. Yeah.
Okay, so really the adoption has got to just be part of a strategy where you're still keeping some of your traditional methods.
I think two aspects. One is the retail mass-based player, and the other aspects is your VIPs and super VIPs. And as junkets, as operators in the room will know that there is a cashless system for the super VIPs and such already. They're not walking around with like James Bond, bags full of money and stuff. So their solutions been existing for a long time. I think the opportunity to have cashless via mobile phones and digital wallets for the retail consumer mom and pop aunties and such playing slot machines exists, and I think the trigger for it is essentially what us in the industry would use to trigger a lot of actions, which is bonuses, loyalties, and then yeah, in those methods.
Okay, thanks, Steve. Nick, so in regards to digital wallets, so most manufacturers are developing digital wallet, so there's a combination of different ways for casinos to go. How are we going to make it easier for casinos to pick a wallet or a digital technology that's going to do everything down the track?
Okay, that's quite a broad question.
Very broad.
And yeah, it depends.
You can pass it on to anyone else.
It depends, on the flavour, or there's products that are out there today that exist that are market ready that can be implemented into casinos. So it really depends on how the casino and what's the casino's technological appetite is and how they want to go and embrace technology. So, in my opinion, they create a wallet, they create their own wallet, let's call it the Ocado wallet, and within that wallet they have their own stable token, Ocado coin, for example, and you would deposit your fiat currency into that wallet, and then that enables you to transact. Now, there's a number of wallets out there, there's a number of technologies out there, and it just comes down to having that beauty parade and finding out which technology or which is scalable enough and reliable enough, and also has respectable gas fees, the transaction fees, and make sure the transaction fees are not so volatile, because we've seen there's a lot of development being done on a chain called Ethereum. Ethereum is very volatile in its gas fee, transaction fee. It could be 50 cents one day, it could be $5 the next day. That becomes an unsustainable business model, because you can't budget your business on that. So your transaction fees have to be fractions, like microtransactions, fractions of cents, because the spin of a wheel, everything that touches the chain is a transaction. So you've got to get those down to like microtransactions, fractions of cents. So when a land-based casino or even an online casino is looking at using progressive technology such as blockchain, they have to take this into consideration, and that's a big factor, because otherwise it's an unsustainable business model if there's volatility in your transaction costs.
Yeah, and understanding those transaction costs is very important to the business. So, Chris, how can you minimise that? So what are the opportunities?
Well, I think a lot of this is going to be driven by regulation as well, right? So depending on the market and depending on how the regulator addresses the market. So if you have a look at what was discussed earlier about in Australia, AML is a big factor coming in. There's been about 1,000 inquiries, in Australia. So that's a big focus. So, but in AML itself, and then responsible gaming, all of that kind of those things are going to require regulations to potentially change, and then that potentially opens the opportunity for them to look at other technologies like blockchain and try to understand it, because you need the regulator to understand it, you need the customers, you need the operator, you also need the banking system to understand and be willing to sort of get involved in that as well. So there's a lot of different factors that are going to determine what markets move forward. And there's certainly, if you look at the Philippines, I think the Philippines are taking a very proactive approach to a lot of different things. The pandemic has allowed different regulations to come in here and different opportunities for the operators. So I look at the Philippines as one of the more dynamic markets. And if you look, I lived in Macau for 12 years, look at what's happening in Macau right now. it's a disaster. You know, they've just gone into their shell, and there's nothing that's going to come out of that. So just depending on regulation, depending on how regulators and governments look at a market, will determine how quickly, or how things will be implemented, I suppose I'm trying to say.
Can I add a little to that?
Absolutely.
Because one of the key focus of my investments is actually in fintech and kind of digital banks, digital wallets, and on and off ramps for crypto. Because that's the friction cost of going on and off crypto. Crypto is great, but how do you actually make that first deposit? And then if you win, how do you ultimately convert it out so you can pay your landlord and your kids' tuitions and such? So those are aspects that we're heavily invested into, whether it's Philippines, Africa, and Latin America as well. So.
Okay, so going back to what Chris was just mentioning as well. So when we are looking at what's available and how well the Philippines is adopting a lot of the technologies, how do you make sure that you're keeping your business sustainable? So what are the other parts of going cashless? How can you protect the customer with harm minimization, etc.? Nick, you had some thoughts on this before.
Yeah, I've certainly got some thoughts on that, because obviously, I come from the UK, and that's a very heavily regulated market, as is Europe and now the US. And working in that regulated market and working with partners of ours, like Crucial Compliance, for example, who are here, there's a big trend now to sort of track player behaviour. And when a player's behaviour changes, it triggers something that we call a marker of harm. And so once you understand the player's behaviour from like the CRM systems that are embedded into your frictionless casino experience, whether it be land-based, online, when that behaviour changes, and it could be visiting the site or visiting the casino more frequently, more often, because you know everything about that player as soon as you've got their digital identity. When that player behaviour changes, it triggers this marker of harm, and that's when we can proactively start to educate the player to play more responsibly, stay within your entertainment budget and zone, rather than playing irresponsibly and visiting the site more frequently, depositing or losing heavily, whatever it may be. But we can educate you to go and have that time out, walk away from the table, set yourself a deposit limit, work within your budget, don't lose the house, so to speak, because we know more about you. And this is where this convergence piece that I've been speaking about for many, many years is now really starting to come into play. And the pandemic has really, really driven this frictionless convergence of technologies and online, offline. Because the offline guys in this room, 80% of you in this room, were very, very cautious about online, because you don't want to cannibalize your revenues. It complements your revenues, because of the previous panel we were talking about metaverse, and of course the IRs are going to build their IR metaverses to encourage the players to continue playing, but play within your comfort zone, and don't lose a house. That's what it comes down to at the end of the day. Protect the player, some way, shape or form.
Thanks, Nick. There's been a lot of advertising as well in that form in Australia, with people recognising about harm minimisation, and with the gaming operators saying that they have some form of protection. Do you think cashless can also bring the younger generation into land-based casinos, Chris?
I think it's got the potential. I mean, obviously, the younger generation are going to be far more tech savvy and just used to those things. But again, just because they're used to that, is that going to drive them to casinos? No, I think that goes back to having the right kind of environment and whether that's service, product, entertainment to bring them in. cashless and the ability to transact, yeah, you're going to need to keep up. I think, as operators, to protect your business, I think it was mentioned on a previous panel that, the gaming industry's traditionally been a little slow to pick up technology. The way to protect your business is, our business, particularly land-based, has been driven by, much larger companies providing big systems that are, heavy, expensive. They put them in, and that's what they rely on. But we live in a world now where there are, and I'm part of a company that's smaller but faster and can deliver, products in a way that sometimes the bigger companies can't. And I think to protect your business is you've got to be looking at all of those technologies, because there's lots out there now. And the way that technology is developed is it allows you to implement technology in a much faster, better, cheaper way. And then that's going to help progress into things like cashless and all the things we've just discussed.
Okay, thanks very much, Chris. Before I throw out to the audience here to ask some questions, is there anything else you wanted to add, Steve or Nick, to those comments?
Well, yeah, just to follow on from what Chris was saying, and also what Steve was saying, we can't cater for all generations, all demographics, but we are looking for the new players, and we're encouraging the new, the younger generation to come in that understands technology, that understands, the cashless world, the cashless scenario. And we want them to come and play, and we want them to gamble, but we want to gamble in a protected environment. So this is where the industry is going. It's happening now. The technology is available now, so we need to embrace it now. And those that take first mover advantage today, they're the ones that will succeed tomorrow, because this is a disruptive technology that's coming in. It's going to allow a lot of new entrants into the marketplace. So we really need to embrace it. That's basically what I've got to say.
I think for younger audiences, content is more of the issue. I think in terms of crypto adoption, you see a younger audience, higher percentage distribution. So yeah, it has the opportunity, but it's certainly not an entitlement to existing operators to expect young players to move on just because you have crypto or you have cashless. I think your content, how you speak to them, that matters much more. So I think one thing we say in our group is, if you view crypto as a way of payment, that's fine. We view it as a way of life for our operations and our customers as well.
Well, I'd like you to put your hands together for our outstanding panel. So Nick and Steve and Chris, thank you, and I hope you certainly got something on the cashless opportunities.